Hello and welcome everyone to episode number 76 at the Indie Football Podcast powered by Ultimate Champions, which is a fantasy platform, and it is a stuff of fantasy for us to have someone as decorated as Roopa Vyas for us, who is a director at the Her Game 2 campaign. Loyalists of our podcasts would remember that we had Charlotte, we had Manisha Kalyan as well, a former guest at our podcast, but a current Indian football player, where we also spoke about this particular campaign a bit. So, thank you, Rupa, for joining us. How are you feeling tonight?
Thanks for having me. I think I'm currently on cloud nine still until Liverpool play again tomorrow evening.
Yeah. I mean, I know how it can be being a Liverpool fan, knowing Anukar sir all these years. So, Anukar sir, I'm sure that win from last week is buoyant for all Liverpool fans across the globe, right?
Yeah, I mean it like as Rupa I think might resonate here. It wasn't just a win. It because we won with kids on the pitch. That was the the best highlight of it. And I think that win has kind of propelled every Liverpool fan to go into this week all out attack, gegen pressing into work. And I think that has been the identity of Klopp's football. And I think that should be the identity when it comes to fighting sexual harassment against women in sports. And for that, we have got Roopa Vyas today, who is, of course, an ambassador with Liverpool FC for the Her Game 2 campaign. Rupa, please give us a bit of an insight into it, and please elaborate on your journey and your struggles and your achievements through it.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Her Game 2 is a campaign against sexism and sexual harassment and everything that women experience in the beautiful game, we call it, but it's not so beautiful for some of us. So, yeah, it started in 2021, 12 women, supporters of all different teams across the English football leagues came together and sort of took a stand, holding up cards that had different insults that everybody has faced. And I think I, like so many others, watched that video launched on IFA Cup final day in 2021 and just ticked off, yes, I've heard that. Yes, I've heard, but get back to the kitchen, make me a sandwich. You don't know what you're talking about. All of the above. And I think, that's why it took the football world by storm because nobody had talked about it so openly before. And since then, it's had a huge impact. We've got out of the English Football League clubs, we've got 73 of the 92 partnered with us. So this means they've all made a pledge to address sexism, to educate fans, to educate other clubs, to just everyone in football, really, to protect their staff as well. And, just promote a sort of culture against sexism. We've
Right.
got hundreds of grassroots teams also signed up, girls' teams, boys' teams, just everybody basically standing together against this, which is so great to see. And then for
Right.
myself, I joined a little bit into the journey. Things were already a bit set up, and then I stepped in to represent my beloved Liverpool. I
Right.
thought, I had to step in. They didn't have an ambassador at the time, and I just thought, why not? And since then, I've gone on to, some people have called me the Queen of the Cop. My face has been on the Cop at Anfield. I've
Oh,
done
That's great.
a lot. Thank you. I've done a lot of work. I've got the club partnered with Her Game too. Just working on, holding them accountable as well. If things do go wrong, we have had some reports from female fans to ensure that they action it and that, I guess they're still committed to protecting their female fans and staff. And, the journey for me has just gone from joining and sort of starting up conversations with Liverpool to now being a director of the campaign. So I kind of stepped up internally and joined the team. So there's 6 of us now running this, and so I'm based in Wales in the UK, and I run Her Game 2 Cymru as well, which is another branch of Her Game 2. So while I'm at home, I can support my local area and support obviously my national team, and then representing Liverpool. I think I've got the best of both worlds there. Two of my red teams, and one of them better than the other, but yeah, can't complain so much. Yeah, I don't know if you guys have watched Wales play football. It's a bit hit and
Yeah,
miss.
yeah. Obviously, yeah.
yeah, of
Gareth
course.
Bale, of course, we
Yeah,
know him. We know them
even
by Gareth Bale.
Even
And
I was
one more thing I'll add, Joe Allen, of course, if you have watched Liverpool play that time.
And Nico Williams, come on.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course, of course.
I'm Nico's biggest
So,
fan. So I'm the only person in the Liverpool fan base that just loves Nico more because he's Welsh.
yeah, but like with all due respect, don't you think defensively he did let us down quite a number of times? Like
Yes, but for
not to,
Wales, he was phenomenal.
yeah,
So
that.
let him have
if
that.
he, if he doubles up in some role in some teams, so you don't really complain a lot if he does not well as good in other places. But
Yeah.
Rupa, have you had chances to meet any of the players, whether outside training grounds or like just have you grabbed a couple of selfies or had an autograph in a tissue paper or a picture, something like that for either Liverpool or Wales?
So unfortunately, I haven't really met them properly, and I'd love to have that experience of properly, getting I just want to hug off Virgil van Dijk. That's my
No.
dream, especially because he is like twice the height of me. I'm quite short, so I just want to meet him, stand next to him, and yeah. But unfortunately, I haven't had like an experience of a proper meeting. But when Cardiff City were in the Premier League a long, long, long time ago, I think it was 2014,
Yeah.
because Cardiff were a local team and Liverpool were playing them. I went to the game with my dad and we stood outside and we met the players. This is when Steven Gerrard, Luis Suarez,
Oh,
Daniel Sturridge, they were all playing. And I had a selfie with Glenn Johnson because I was sort of getting my angles right. And Glenn Johnson grabbed my phone and took a selfie with me. I wasn't too keen on it, but got a selfie with Glenn Johnson. So, and then Steven Gerrard came out. I think I've got the video on my Instagram of him coming out. He took ages. Everyone was waiting for him. Obviously, I was crammed like up against a gate. Like I'm quite short, so like people were towering over me. And he came out. There was a young boy to my left. He signed his shirt, and I was going to get my shirt signed, but I noticed they were just scribbling, so I didn't want to ruin my shirt. So I had a Liverpool like flip phone case. So I took it off and I was getting everyone to sign it. And I left a huge space for Gerrard, but Brendan Rodgers signed where Gerrard was meant to sign. And I was so annoyed. Yeah.
uh, I
Then
mean,
he refused me a selfie. He said, "Sorry, I've got a flight to catch," and left and went on the
yeah.
coach. But Gerrard did sign my phone case, and I've got that phone case put neatly away in the like protective cover, and I've not touched it since.
Uh, I am sure you wouldn't have called Brendan Rodgers a beautiful human being, as he often used to describe a lot of his players in those press conferences. Actually, I have a question to ask. Was this the year when Cardiff defeated Manchester City?
Oh, maybe. I can't remember.
Because
My memory's not
it
that good.
was,
I remember we beat them 6-3. That's all I remember.
yeah, I think it was the season then, because I think it was the second season, and I think they
Yeah.
defeated Manchester City. Anyway, getting back, Rupa, I want to ask this question. Like, I had this curiosity about the Her Game to campaign. Of course, Zoe Pan can have his insights too. Like, we have heard a bit about it. Now, I want to ask. Supposedly, I have a friend who is in the UK and has faced sexual harassment in sports, for that matter. So, how do the Her Game to volunteers or the people who are running it? How do they on the ground when it comes to how they are able to practically help that person out in getting help, and how is it different from say wanting to go to a social service or wanting to go to the law for that? So I wanted to ask, how does the Her Game to campaign differentiate? Can you like give us a bit of an insight for our viewers on that?
Yeah, so we deal with reports. Obviously, we've got our own reporting line through our website, but also this is why we have ambassadors and we put our faces out there. We put our social media details, our emails on our website, just so everybody knows who we are and they can approach us in person or feel comfortable to approach us online as well, because it's quite daunting sometimes reporting something when you don't have a face, like to know who you're reporting to or how they're going to deal with it. But essentially, if we had a report and it's related to, I think the easiest example is a professional club. So for example, if it was Liverpool and a report came through our system, we would handle it. So obviously, as one of the directors and the ambassador, it's kind of easier. But as directors, we receive all reports directly. We can review them. People have the option to remain anonymous going forward. But we have their details, so we can contact them directly and sort of tell them what we're doing and give them updates. But essentially, the ambassador would be involved throughout, and we would contact. So we have great connections with the leagues, so the EFL, the Premier League, even the National League to an extent, and then also like Welsh leagues as well. So if anything came through, we have connections there to report things straight away, but also with the clubs. So I guess the general route of raising the report would be to the club, to the league, and then, if required, to the football policing unit. So in the UK, within the police, we have a football policing unit that runs across the UK, and they work with different police organisations then, and they can delegate to the local police. But in the UK, I'm not sure what it's like elsewhere around the world, but sexism is not a hate crime. Anyone can be sexist and get away with it. It can be offensive, but it's not necessarily a hate crime, whereas racism, homophobia, they're all classed as hate crimes and can be instantly sort of dealt with down the legal route, but sexism, not so much. Obviously, sexual harassment, especially if it's physical, can be, but there's still a lot of grey areas, and I think there's a lot of work still to be done by sort of legal forces, as well as, organisations like us. We're working with local police forces to, I guess, educate. There's so many different types of sexism. I believe there's 6 different types. I can't name them all off the top of my head, but one of our directors has been doing some research into this with the police force, and it's quite interesting to understand that sexism is not just I guess discriminating against me because I don't know what I'm talking about because I'm a woman. There's so many different types, and obviously there's the more physical aspect as well, where it comes to harassment or assault. So yeah, essentially, I think it comes down to the ambassadors having good connections with clubs, and obviously clubs holding their pledge that they've made to us that they will action this and support their fans. And then we just deal with it with a collaborative approach. And then hopefully, if the clubs can identify who's responsible, I think the first port of call for Her Game 2, depending on the severity, is to educate people. So obviously, we've had cases where there's young people, under the age of 18, who have said something that maybe they don't understand fully what they're saying and the impact of it and the consequences and how the other person feels. So for us, we just want to educate people first and foremost. And then after that, once you're past the point of educating and they're just not understanding, not willing to understand, then that's when action needs to be taken, such as bans from the stadium, suspending season tickets or memberships. And, for clubs to take that stance, I think it's really important. And also to publicise the fact that an incident happened and this is the outcome, so other people are aware as well.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I was wondering about a couple of things as you went on and shared many things that, of course, would be helpful to many people here because, as I shared earlier, people do know about it, but in terms of groundwork, in terms of execution, there is not a lot of awareness around it. So, you mentioned about your work with about Her Game 2 as a campaigns work with clubs. Is the formal understanding slash agreement with clubs work? Is it a memorandum of understanding? Is it a contract, or how do you legalize this association with different clubs, leagues that you mentioned?
Yeah, so we have our partnership agreements. Obviously, being a young organization and being full of people who work in different industries, we're not from the football world. People think that we work full time in football and we know things inside out. We don't. A lot of the stuff, the policies that we have, even internally for our ambassadors, like code of conduct and things like that, it's all from, I guess, picking on knowledge from our current jobs. I seen that my job has a policy on something, so I want to bring it into Her Game too. So that's kind of what we've done with partnership agreements, obviously using our knowledge in different areas and putting together a sort of agreement that lays out responsibilities of the club, our responsibility then as an organisation to share any reports we get, to share information, obviously update them if anything changes our end, and to maintain that relationship. I think is the most important part, because I think a football club as well, they have so much going on constantly. Every day there's something new. There's something new to support constantly. There's so many organizations and charity days and national days and things like that to raise awareness of. So it's our responsibility then to have ambassadors who keep her game too at the forefront, without pushing boundaries and without nagging, but keeping it as a priority, I think, is quite important rather than highlighting it just when we get a report through.
Yeah, I think that's a fair insight into things, because it's interesting that you mentioned how there are certain policies that you look during your main job. Can you also tell us a bit about what's the thing that you do mainly apart from the Her Game to campaign?
Yeah, so I work in pharmaceuticals. So I work in clinical pharmaceuticals as a quality assurance audit officer. So I handle like client audits. They come on site and I host them. I talk to them all day and I show them around and show them policies and procedures and things like that. So I basically just talk to people all day.
So your formal education was around medical lines, or was it something else?
Pharmacy.
Okay,
Pharmacy.
pharmacy,
I
of
had
course.
to go down the traditional, Indian student, so I've got to do something medical, right? I didn't want to do medicine in the end, so this is the next best thing. I wasn't allowed a career in football.
Of course, I mean, the reason, and of course many people know, but we'd love to share it again. I and Anukar sir met in a dental school, and he was 1 year elder to me, and also in the same room where students of my batch were getting ragged. But of course, from there, I just graduated towards a more sports centric career. I did have my graduation in something else and a post graduation in sports management. So I did resonate a lot with the part when you said, there are certain things that I see in my main job role that I see, and how can I probably just pick that up and use that in the Her Game 2 campaign, because that's what I'm doing with my it is the IPL season here in India. The WPL began just last year. So do you how much of a Her Game 2 campaign focuses on different sports, or do you think the emphasis is more on a particular sport like football in UK, or you think it is equally distributed across different sports for women's participants?
So Her Game 2 was born from, football fans. And that's how it came about. And that is our main aspect, I guess. But we have branched out. So from football, we've gone into cricket, we've gone into rugby, and we've gone into ice hockey. So I think it's where there's a need. I think cricket and rugby were the sort of obvious like next branches to open, especially because they're so big in the UK as well. And then ice hockey came about because one of the directors had connections with Team GB, which is quite huge. And they're supporting. They wanted to promote Her Game 2, and now setting up that partnership. There's already a few ice hockey teams already partnered, which is great. But I think football is where from my experience, I don't follow many other sports. I watch cricket when I have to, rugby only every now and then. I'm Indian, I have to watch a bit of cricket, right? Otherwise,
Are
I'd
you
feel
watching this? Are you, sorry to interrupt you here, but are you watching the India versus England series?
no. I
No.
well, I watch it not by
No one in
choice.
England is watching it probably.
It's on in the house, so
Uh,
I don't have a choice. Sometimes, it's on. My granddad's at home all the time, so he's watching constantly. But yeah, I watch not by choice. But I am going to my first proper. I do watch Glamorgan, which is a local team to me. So I've been to watch them a few times, and they're like T20 games. And I'm
yeah.
going to my first international game, England Australia, and I will be supporting Australia because I'm not English, even though it's England and Wales. I don't support England.
So,
I do
so
support India.
you have been to that game, or you will be to that game?
I will be going in September. I've booked the tickets though, and I've booked my time off work. So my
All
family
right.
are very proud.
I mean, England and Australia are the oldest cricket rivalries, so I mean that is definitely something to cherish a lot. Uh, I just can't help but think more about what you just shared in terms of her game to having different levels of people working, plus having different organizations in different parts of the world. Do you have like, we were just doing a research on her game too, and her game to UK is very prominent. Her game to USA is also amongst the news headlines when we talk about this topic. Do you guys have any kind of panel discussions, meetings, catch up conversations on how the campaign is doing in different parts of the world, trying to pick up what's working, trying to discard what's not working? Or do you have those conversations, or her game to UK does its own stuff, her game to USA does its own stuff? Is there any kind of a conversation?
So at the moment, honestly, I think it's a little bit disconnected just because I think it's really difficult for us to get together around work, around time zones, etc. And it is a little bit different, and I think we do need to align with what's working really well in the UK and bring that over to the USA, and then vice versa. Obviously, we're all learning, and we'll find out what works, but also what works for one club will not work for another. We've experienced that already within the same leagues, within the same region. Even within Liverpool. Liverpool were very hesitant. Everton are just on it. I've got to give them credit where it's due. There are clubs who are brilliant with this sort of work. So.
I am disappointed with my club right now.
I'm just being honest. Trust me, I hold them to account a lot. I will tell them straight, as a fan and as a director of this campaign, I need to represent the campaign, and I tell them when I'm not happy with the way things are going. And I think, they need that, and they need to be able to hear that from a fan perspective, as well as, me coming from an organization perspective.
But
I
I'm
will just
sorry,
forget,
sorry.
no, I'll just
Yeah,
forget what I wanted to say about Everton. Apart from credit, they would also like some points going their ways.
They got
yeah,
some back, didn't they? So
yeah, they got four of them back. But I
Yeah.
have this question, can you give us a bit of an insight into what way, some teams have accepted it better and what when some teams haven't? Because I think that should, because if through this podcast it becomes like a trend for teams to watch and see, or even for clubs in India, I think that is something which clubs should be aware of at this point. So can you give us a bit of an insight as to how certain clubs have accepted it and certain haven't, and what were the repercussions and what were the reasons they were hesitant about it?
yeah, so there's a lot of things that we do as an organization in terms of, so this week and next week you'll see a lot of clubs across the UK doing their dedicated fixture because it's International Women's Day next week, and you'll see some differences. So some people will promote it as an International Women's Day fixture, some people will promote it as a Her Game 2 fixture, and the elements around that are obviously negotiable. We don't have to do everything. You don't have to do, by the book. Every club is different, and it should be like that. But one of the main elements is the players warming up wearing Her Game 2 t-shirts. It's something so simple. They don't have to do anything different. They just chuck the t-shirt on before they go out and warm up. And it's got such a huge impact in terms of seeing the players supporting Her Game 2. And that seems to be, I'd say, for the bigger clubs, it's a bit of an issue, more due to sponsorships, due to commitments, on their training tops, they've got sponsors, they're not allowed to cover it up. There's no workaround, we don't have money to pay for it, especially not that level of money. It's a bit too expensive just to pay for them to have a logo, but it's just little things like that which can have a huge impact. There are clubs who will not, they won't put our LED advertisements out because they have, again, it's down to sponsors, it's down to space like that. Or potentially, like I said, there's loads of organizations now all working on different things. And I think some clubs feel like the message of each of them will get diluted if they keep, this week it's Environmental Week, next week it's Her Game 2, the week after it's anti-racism, then it's LGBTQ History Month. And there's so many things that I guess you have to do because you're involved and you want to promote everything, that they sometimes don't want to commit to doing everything, on the pitch. And I think that is one of the issues we face with Liverpool, because being such a big club, having so many huge sponsors, so many commitments, and so much work to do, I think it's hard for them to commit to little things like that. I don't think there's anything in terms of like what we do and being against it. I don't think it's possible for clubs to be against what we do and what we're promoting, because if they are, then there's a huge issue. I mean, I
Absolutely.
will admit we have had one club, I'm not going to name names, but not in the Premier League, lower league, but has said that they don't need to partner with us, which is a bit shocking. And whenever we hear stories, obviously we're like, okay, not surprised. But, you know, on the whole, generally it's just logistics. You know, with Liverpool, it took a while to get a partnership, purely due to the amount of people it needs to go through, the amount of people who need to sign off, sort of using logos and things like that. With Liverpool, I didn't even try to use their logo without their permission, because I would have a lawsuit on my hands, and I did not want that.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, it's just, I guess it's just about us fitting in. And like I said, we're less than 3 years old, so I think for us it's building the credibility for clubs to come to us and say, right, we want to do this with Her Game Too, rather than us pushing for it. I think that's probably the better route for us.
You know, I think if there's a similarity between the Her Game 2 campaign and what we are doing here at the Indie Football Podcast in terms of longevity, both of us are less than 3 years old. So I think that's a good place to begin in terms of having synergy. So uh, now, Rupa, you were quite informative and quite open in discussing what were the issues. Of course, there we do understand there have been sponsorship limitations to getting certain things printed in a more indelible manner for the audiences out there. But can you also probably discuss barriers to equality in terms of rights, finances, and allowances? In terms of the, as you mentioned, you get reports, right? So, what is a standard, or what are the maybe top three basic topics or complaints or grievances that you get as part of the Her Game 2 campaign, which entails you as an organization to focus most of your energies to find a solution for?
I think it's hard to say what the most common things are, but I think a lot of it is stems from chants. So a lot of football clubs have chants which are just anti-sex. They're like not anti-sexist; they are sexist. You know,
Derogative, yeah.
women. They're talking about, I guess, you know, private parts of women and stuff like that, especially at you know, maybe not at Premier League clubs. I haven't heard chants like that at Liverpool, although, you know, you do hear chants about players' mums and things like that, and things that I'm so used to hearing, but now I'm
Right.
like, why is this going on? Like, why are people singing this? And I'm telling, especially my mates, my guy mates, like, to stop singing this, and you know, it's just not on. Whereas I think that's one of the main things that make women feel uncomfortable, and they have reported that. But obviously, it's really difficult to police, and it does take, I guess, the club to come out and put a stop to it. For example, the Chelsea chant that mainly Liverpool fans sing, you know, they came out and said it, but then it did spur people on to sing it a bit more, but then it has died out since. So it's really hard to, I guess, find the balance of policing it, but also not telling everyone what you can and can't sing and can and can't do. But I think, you know, I think it's literally just education. The more people think about it and the more people know about the campaign, and I guess the impact of the campaign. So, for example, there was a Premier League club who had a report come kind of through us. It was through like social media, and then we supported the victim. But then they did ban the fan, and they posted a statement that there was an incident of sexual assault, and the fan has been banned for, or short-term ban. And instantly, you know, I think fans of that club will think, oh my gosh, what's happened? It's not acceptable. And there were loads of, I guess, supportive comments on there as well, for the victim to see and feel reassured. But then also, it sends out that message to anyone who may have even engaged in that behavior before, that they shouldn't do it. But yeah, there's all sorts of reports. It's hard to say like what's the most common, and there's something that we focus on. There's pretty much everything, but the main thing is, I guess, chanting, and then also, I guess, working with football clubs and leagues and organisations is really hard to control stewarding. But one of the biggest feedbacks we get is that someone didn't report something at the time in the stadium. And there's hundreds of reasons why they didn't, especially as a woman. There's more reasons, but even as a guy, people you don't want to go up to a steward in front of the person and say, that guy there, he did this, or that woman, you don't want to do it in front of them. So speaking to a steward can be really difficult. And I think for us, one of the next big projects as an organisation, and with the help of the Premier League and the EFL, is to work on some element of steward training.
Yeah, of course, because I do believe at some point of time, what you mentioned about having an impact, and I'm sure her game to the entire campaign has one. But for example, let's just imagine a hypothetical situation where it is the campaign approaching a club about, we want the club, and it's a prominent club, maybe the top three Premier League clubs in a couple of years' time. If not, they have already partnered. Let's just assume they are yet to partner with the Her Game to campaign, and they ask for an impact report. So do you guys do you guys maintain a dossier, or have you even come across a situation like this where people ask, okay, we want to know more about what you have done? So do you like submit a document? Is it a PowerPoint presentation, or what are the things that you'd like to focus more when someone asks for a formal documentation of the work that the campaign has done in its 2.5 years?
Yeah, I think an impact report is on our list to do. So, like I said, we're all from different backgrounds. So I think we need to pull on people's skills outside of her game too, and get people to, gather data for us. And I think the way we were gathering reports previously, and even at the moment, is not, I guess, not the best way to be able to like trend the data. So we work with different organizations. We're on regular calls with local organizations and the FPU. So to be able to have those trend reports and, like you said, an impact report, I think is a huge step for us, and I think it shine a better light on the work we're doing. But we do, when we have meetings and when we're trying to pitch the campaign to people, so whether it's individuals who work within football who we need their influence, or whether it is a football club, we do have like a presentation prepared which shows. So in 2021, Her Game 2, so within the first few months, sent out a survey to female fans. So surveyed nearly 400 female fans, and we've got some hard-hitting data there in terms of people who've seen and witnessed sexism, people who've experienced sexism. So I think it was, a high percentage. 93 said they'd experienced sexism in a pub. And a lot of, just to go and watch the game, I think is horrendous. But I think a lot of female football fans can probably relate that they've been there. And yeah, so that data is vital. So we put that in there. Obviously, we'd love to do a newer one now that we've had a huge impact and got so many partner clubs, to see if that has changed or if it's got worse. Because I think at the moment the scope and the way things are going is saying that it's getting worse, but I'm not sure if it's getting worse or it's just, the stories are being told, awareness is being raised, and people know that they can report it. Because I'll be honest, even like 3 years ago, I didn't know I could report sexism, and I just dealt with it and just, it's part of the game. But now I know that it's not, and I shouldn't accept it at all.
Yeah,
Right, right.
absolutely. Anukar sir, I think there is a lot of flashbacks and throwbacks to what Charlotte had shared from her episode to whatever Rupa has shared so far, right?
Absolutely. I mean, actually, whatever Rupa was saying, I was just processing it, and it made me
Yeah, it's a
realize
lot.
as per.
It's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It made me realize that, like women, like she said about the number 93%. I think that is a huge number, and I think it's disappointing how even in 2024, like even like if that survey was 2 3 years back, it's shameful how even like the most developed of countries, the developing of countries have this sort of stat. Also, like Rupa, like we had Charlotte some time back, as like we
Yeah,
pointed out at the
yeah,
start of the episode. So, like what I've seen with Charlotte is that, of course, she's a single mom. Was great. Is like very active with the Her Game to campaign, and on when it comes to social media, she and a lot of other ambassadors of the Her Game 2 campaign have received a lot of flack, a lot of trolls. I mean, I won't deny, like, today we were doing a giveaway campaign, a couple of trolls came to our account also. So that's how I think social media works. But like, with all due respect, I mean, I have seen like a lot of people saying those remarks that you talked about, telling them to go to the kitchen, or that stupid sandwich remark. So I mean, what sort of repercussions, or what sort of strategies does the Her Game 2 campaign have for someone targets women on social media like that? And also, like, supposedly, if there is someone who is not within the parameters of the UK, suppose someone, say India or Pakistan, just goes around and is doing this sort of thing, going around saying mean things to women, especially involved in sports. How do you plan to counter that, and what does the Her Game 2 campaign do in that regard?
So it's really hard to say what we as the campaign can do, because I think in those situations, especially online, we rely on firstly the social media platform, which if you've reported anything on X in the last few months, you'll know is absolutely useless. I back in November had a racist comment on a tweet and or post or whatever it's called now, and it's blatantly racist. The police told me it meets the threshold, but X got back to me and said nothing can be done. So if that's done on blatant racism, which is a hate crime, which is, it's obvious, clear cut what is racist and what isn't. With sexism and those sort of comments, there's no chance. We as a
But
campaign,
I'd like to interrupt you here. Beg your pardon. A couple of times I had actually reported a couple of guys saying some really mean things about women, and although I agree that most of the times they don't take an action, two times I got a report that those accounts had been banned. Like, at least until this, maybe recently, since the Elon Musk era, I guess. But
yeah.
yeah, there is some repercussion in that regard.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I think it's not clear what the guidelines are. So for us as a campaign, especially because we've got a community now, we've got over 100 people. So if one of us gets abuse, you're getting 100 people coming at you. We don't, obviously we have our code of conduct. We're not going to encourage a pile on anybody, no matter how horrible they've been to you. But, we do all share the links, we share screenshots, and we report. Whether the rest of the public do as well, that's up to them. But internally, we've built this community and we're standing together and fighting against this. So we do report things and we do have some luck, but then majority of the time we'll all report and nothing happens. And I think, like I said, with my experience with the racist comment, if that doesn't get taken down, it doesn't get the person suspended, there's less hope for sexist comments. And I feel like it's getting harder to report things. I don't know if you've reported anything in the last few months, but there's a lot of steps, whereas it used to be like 2-3 steps, and then you've got the option to add comments and context. Whereas now there's a lot more steps, there's a lot more different meanings, and it's quite difficult. But as a campaign, we've got, like I said, good connections with the leagues, with the police, and we can raise things through them. So especially the Premier League, they're good at investigating online abuse. So, we as ambassadors, and because we work with the Premier League, they are, helping protect us to an extent, and, monitoring our Instagram. So we've signed up to their filters, which they offer clubs and players. So if we get any abuse, it's kind of filtered out, so we don't have to see it, because that can have the worst impact. And supporting us in that way. But otherwise, we'd rely on them to sort of help with the investigation. They've got the tools to investigate, and they've had some success stories of, finding people who send abuse to players on the other side of the world. So if they can do that and help with, anything that we get, there are some things though that we just can't stop. And unfortunately, it is a case of just, blocking it out, blocking people physically on social media if you can, or muting them, and just kind of steering clear, because it's really difficult sometimes to get a result, and then it could be quite disheartening. But like I said, having our community, I think that's something that's priceless. We've got a whole community, not just women, we've got men involved as well. And, to have that level of support, I think it goes a long way. And I think that's all we can currently do, without funding, without resources, and, without anybody working on this full time. That's the extent of what we can offer each other. And then hopefully in the future, there'll be tools that we can, install to help people, and I guess just provide a layer of protection, because we all deserve it. I think we're putting ourselves out there, like I said, and it makes us a target at times. But hopefully it doesn't extend beyond that.
Right, right.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
guess we just wanted to know, as part of the concluding section of our episode with you, now that you have had a considerable amount of experience driving so many things within the campaign, now if we want to ask, and we are happy to, of course, have a longer, more elaborate conversation on this later on, but how do you think independent football organizations like us in India can help the Her Game 2 campaign more?
I think, just potentially we could explore a partnership with Her Game too, and to promote, like you're doing now, and getting our ambassadors on to tell their different stories, or promoting, I guess, because Her Game too is not just about women's football. Obviously, we love promoting women's football, but the issues of sexism lie within the men's game. So, to promote the work that we're doing within the men's game, especially the Premier League, because I know it's huge in India as well, and to
Yeah.
promote the work that we're doing with our clubs, I think just, and having these conversations, I think it's so important, because we'll reach a new audience now, an audience that I've probably never spoken to or come across. And they'll hear this and hopefully want to find out more, and then go on social media and search Her Game 2, or go on hergame2.co.uk, and then find all the information that they need to kind of figure out what they can do in terms of being an ally, or just supporting the campaign, or seeking support from us as well. Obviously, we haven't quite reached the ends of India just yet. We've only just expanded into Europe through Her Game to France. And obviously we've got the USA team who are doing their work, but hopefully continues to grow, and we can have maybe a branch out in India. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. You just mentioned about the USA. Do you follow the US women's soccer national team?
I follow from a distance, but I follow Wales, and again, like I said, it's just like the men's team is hit and miss. I'm used
Yeah.
to sort of hit and miss football, not high quality.
Oh yeah, and this is something that I guess even Anukarsh sir does not know. I just recently watched the US women's national soccer team's documentary on Netflix. It's called Under Pressure. Yeah, it's about the 2023 World Cup campaign, which unfortunately they did not go their way. And at the end of it all, I loved how, of course, there are many all or nothing documentaries. Have you watched any of them, Rupa? The all or nothing
I
documentary?
watched the highlights of the Man City one, which
Yeah,
involved before they played Liverpool. I only watch the
yes.
highlights. I don't go in depth. I don't really want to know.
No, I mean, so the major narrative around football documentaries, of course, has to be is their performances and the results and the trophies that they won. But the one thing that I loved the most about the US women's documentary that I saw is about how they speak about creating impact off the field with the performances that they have on the field, and that's something which I believe would hold the Her Game 2 campaign on USA even better, because already we have had so many proponents, so many ambassadors of the game. Here in India, I'd be honest, things are very slow. Not that people don't care, but people just don't have the time, or people don't have the resources, or people just don't think it's worth their effort. But yeah, we are quite excited to probably do more things around it, because of course slowly we are having a female contingent helping us across different sections, be it our podcasts, screenings, different brand extensions that we are trying to create for ourselves. But Thank you, Rupa, for taking out the time. I'm sure it is of great value to whoever is going to listen to this episode. It is something that, of course, we have time and again highlighted in our episode that not many people know about. And Anukar sir, many new things for our listeners to learn and probably think about.
Yeah, actually, I also thought of one thing. Rupa is gonna hate me for reminding her of this, but I mean, I'm sure she will have mixed feelings because of it. I remember Gareth Bale scored this winner against Liverpool in the Champions League final some years back.
Yeah,
Now,
2018
Do
final.
remember.
the
I've
the
wiped
reason
it
I am
from
saying this
memory.
is the reason I am saying this is because it was against Liverpool when he was while he was wearing the Real Madrid jersey, which is depictive of you while being a Wales player. So it just kind of reminded me that that moment was like the epitome of this whole podcast happening right now.
That moment has been wiped from my brain until now. So thank you for reminding me. I was there when that happened. I was in the stadium when that happened, and I was traumatized. Obviously, my consolation from my mother was he's Welsh. I was like, it doesn't matter. He's playing against Liverpool. So yeah, it was traumatizing to say the least. But I mean, it's been a long time now. It was traumatizing enough seeing Carrius put on a goalkeeper shirt again when he played for Newcastle the other day. So
Yeah,
this, I'm over it now. I can watch the goal and fair play, what a goal! But at the time, I was sobbing on my way home.
I
So
can
Quite,
relate.
quite an iconic match to be a part of the stadium audiences. Are there any other memorable matches that you have seen as part of the audience in a stadium?
am I allowed to mention 7-0 against Man United? Because I was right behind the goal in the Kop.
Yeah,
Oh,
though if I is a Real Madrid fan, not a Manchester United fan anyway.
yeah, but then of course that was a very iconic. That was a I know how the evening unfolded that night. Among all my football friends, we were all having a party, and there were people were drinking, and when someone mentioned 7-0, half of them first of all did not even believe, and then the person he was the person who first broke out the news to us that the scoreline is 7-0. He's just known as the person joking all the time, so we did not believe what he said. But that was quite the match. I mean, of course, for you to be part of the stadium audience for that match is something that no matter what happens, that will be a difficult memory to wipe off your brain, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I do. So I've been to a lot of games, and like I do take it for granted. So when I was in uni, I went to uni in Liverpool for one
Oh,
reason and one reason only, to be closer to my club. But I finished uni during COVID, like just as COVID came around, and shut the whole world down. So I
yeah.
moved back home. But yeah, moving to Liverpool for uni and being able to experience all those games was great. But I told you my memory is terrible. So the only ones I remember are like the big score lines. And another memory, which was not a good memory, was Man City away, which was on my birthday, 3rd of January 2019, and we lost. But if we won that, we would have won the league. So
Which
that is a
year
memory.
was it? Which year?
2019.
2019.
Oh, 2019.
So
Okay, okay.
yeah, that
Yeah.
season where we could have, I just had a traumatic experience. I was in the hospital just before Christmas, and then I thought, this is the game. It's my birthday. We never play on my birthday. Went all the way to Manchester when I was told, you're not well enough, don't go. Went, and then we lost. And then we didn't win the league. And we lost the league by 1 point. So that lives with
Yeah.
me
Hmm.
forever, as
But
a traumatizing memory.
but then you won it the next season, if that's any consolation.
Yeah,
So
yeah, but then I wasn't there in the stadium because of COVID. So
Right.
but this season, we're playing Wolves on the last game, and this is the third
Yeah.
time where we play Wolves on the last game. And the last two times that we nearly got it, last time we played Wolves, I think it was when City were playing Villa. And then,
Yeah.
do you remember like the players were asking what the score
Yeah.
was? And then, and
Yeah.
then
Villa
Villa
were
lost.
winning
But
2-0.
Villa were winning. Gerrard's Villa. And I
Yeah.
was in the stadium for that, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Because people were going around saying, Villa are winning," like lying about it. So all the Liverpool fans, I started crying, and then they're like, "Only joking." So yeah. So this season is the season where we beat Wolves, and then all the Liverpool fans were on the pitch celebrating.
Okay,
I'm
last
manifesting
question.
it.
Last question before we let you go. Whom do you think is coming after Jurgen Klopp?
I don't want to think about it. I don't know, to be honest, because I thought Xabi Alonso is in for it, but now, I'm hearing that he may not come to Liverpool. I don't know, and I don't really want to think about that. I just know that I don't want Brighton's De Zerbi. I don't want him at all. He can
Yeah,
stay away from Liverpool. Obviously, I don't want Gerrard. I don't want him anywhere near the club ever
yeah.
again. No offense to him. I loved him as a
Ever.
player, but as a manager.
Yeah, he does not have an impressive series. But of course, thank you once again, Rupa, for taking out the time. I know you had a 50-minute drive back home, and now you had a 50-minute conversation with us. So I hope the latter was more pleasant. And I know some, but we will stay in touch. We will look forward to have conversations around probably having a formal partnership in place and be first movers of her game to here in India, which would be of immense pride to us. Thank you, Rupa, for taking out
Abs-
the time. See you around.
Thank
Thanks.